You can't move forward if you're wrapped up in guilt and shame of the past. You can reflect on the past. I will forever. We should. It's like looking in the rearview mirror. You have to look and see because that gives you a little bit of context about where you're at and what's around you and maybe how far you've come. And by the way, guilt and shame actually lead to a lot of other things that you should cut out of your life. Addiction, alcohol abuse, pornography, you name the vice. And a lot of it is actually wrapped up in guilt and shame. Kipp, what's up, man? Great to see you. I hope you had a great weekend. You seem a little on edge this morning, if I can say so.
Yeah. Last week we have Hawaii. We have our Hawaii hunt. I think I fly out on Saturday. I think you'd probably do as well. And after our hunt in Hawaii, I'm meeting with my family in Oahu for a few more weeks. So this is like,
oh, you are?
One
so
last week at home for a while.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have all this stress of like, I got to get all these things done. So So you're picking up what is exactly happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm only there for the week for our hunt with my oldest son, and even me this week, I'm like, oh, this is crunch time. I think I've got 8 podcasts this week I've got to do because I've got to get this week's done, next week's done, and half of the following week's done. So it gets a little wild, but whatever I can do to help, man, let me know. I get it. Let's jump right into maybe some questions today and distract ourselves for an hour if we can.
Excellent. Sounds good. And you had a question that you wanted to cover on Facebook first, I believe.
Yeah. So this is a gentleman who reached out to me, and I thought it was an interesting question. I'm not going to give his name because he said that he was a little concerned about posting in the group, let alone blasting this out on the podcast. But he says this. He said, relationship question. I'm in the early stages of dating. The girl and I are and were super into each other, but she has backed away due to personal reasons that have nothing to do with me, as she is struggling with several things related to work, life, etc. How do I respect the space that she has asked for while still showing that I'm interested and want to lead towards a relationship when she's more ready? My guess is the best answer is to walk away and continue to focus on myself and grow, and it's irrelevant if this girl comes back or not. So I think he answered his question, honestly. It's pretty cold. It's harsh and it's hard to hear. I want to give some context to it because it is a good question. But yeah, he answered it, and I think he came up with the right answer. He said here, this is a new relationship. He's in the early stages of dating. Here's what I found is that, and I think most people who have been in relationships and even coaches who help with dating, if you're early in a relationship and she's saying she's backing off and saying that it's something else, it's probably not something else. Because women who are interested make time to be with the men they're interested in, bottom line. So if she's stressed at work, but she's into you, she's gonna be into you and maybe stressed, but she's still gonna be doing things with you. And I feel like, based on what I'm hearing in this limited context that we have, that maybe she's just making some excuses and she's not as into you as you thought. This is really hard to hear. So you're absolutely right. The best thing that you can do, whether or not she's interested or not, the best thing you can do is to always improve yourself in 4 realms. Number 1, your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Number 2, the connections and relationships that you have, not her necessarily, but your parents, your friends, your coworkers, your clients, whoever it might be. Number 3, your physical health. And then number 4, becoming a man of value and contributing value to the world. And I feel like if you do those things, there's a lot of tactics, I think, that go along with this. But if you do these things, she's either going to see that you're a valuable man and that you don't, quote unquote, need her in your life, that you would like to have her, but you don't need her. And that's very attractive to women. Or she's not going to respond, but you're going to make yourself very, very attractive to another woman who would love to find time to spend time with you.
Yeah. It's sad. Like you know what I mean? I feel for him, right? Because he probably wants to fight for this girl and keep trying to make it happen because he probably thinks she's amazing. And but yeah, she probably just,
And she might be amazing, but there's a lot of other amazing women too. And that's, I know that's hard to hear, and it doesn't even feel like that might be the case, but it's reality. Like every single man out there has been with multiple women, and they think when they break up with one, it's the end of the world, and they find another one who ends up being miraculously better than they had before.
yeah.
So I don't want to frame it as sad, because then it's a little bit like, oh, well, it's sad. Let's mope around. Let's be sad. No, it's not sad.
Yeah.
It's just, it's reality. Chalk it up. You were in the early stages. You probably weren't in love with her. You were probably infatuated with her, which there's nothing wrong with that, but something else will happen. Just make sure you're in the best position when that opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, that's good. That's solid sound advice from Mr. Michler. We're going to jump to some questions from the Iron Council. I think a call out just really quick. I mean, we're going to open up enrollment to the Iron Council here within a week or so. So if you're interested in banding with us, that's orderofman.com/Iron Council to learn more, and join us in this next cohort coming up mid-June.
Well, I would also say, even if you're not completely, quote unquote, interested, get interested, because you want your life to be better. You want to improve your life. And so you need two things. Every man needs two things in his life. He needs a framework, and he needs a network. A framework is the systems he doesn't currently have in order to propel him to new results. And a network is a group of, in this case, men who will challenge you. They'll call you out. They'll push you outside of your comfort zone. They'll hold you accountable. They'll give you new ideas and insights, and they actually care about you. So you need both, and too many men are missing one or both of those things in their lives, and they're struggling unnecessarily because of it. Men are isolated, they're lonely, they're depressed, they're sad, they're anxious, even suicidal. And then on top of that, all of the things in their life they're not necessarily mediocre, but they're not as good as they could be because they don't have effective systems in place. They're just kind of winging it. And a lot of men are good at winging it. I'm pretty good at winging it. But when I don't wing it and I actually implement the systems that we've developed, it's predictable. It's replicatable. We produce results. It's like when I go over to the faucet to turn the water on, I pull the handle up and the water comes on. When I wake up in the morning, the sun rises in the east. Every morning for the last 44 years, it's done that. And it's predictable and it's replicatable, and I can set my watch to it. And it's the same thing when you have effective systems in your life for improvement and self-development.
Yeah, that's solid. Well, and we'll end up doing some preview calls as well. So if you have some questions, come to those preview calls with those questions. We'll address those as part of our process leading up to this open enrollment. Just really quick, orderofman.com/Iron Council. All right, Ty Sherwood, I've learned a new word today, unabashedly. What are some ways we can live in this life unabashedly?
That's a good word. I mean, I've heard that word. I don't really know the exact definition, but when I hear that word, I think of bashful. So the antithesis to unabashedly would be, So bashful, I think about the dopey little dwarf on Snow White. Bashful is one of the dwarfs, and he's shy and he's intimidated and he doesn't assert himself and he lets people run all over him because he's too scared or fearful. So I think that is exactly right when it comes to being bashful. But unabashedly means you're bold, you're convicted, you have clarity, you have focus, you have drive, you have determination, you have capability, you have courage, you have confidence. And so you might say things that aren't always easy for other people to hear. Maybe you're doing things that people don't approve of or acknowledge you for, and you don't care. You're just so focused on what your purpose and mission are. So But when it comes to living unabashedly, there's a formula to this. We talked about systems a second ago. There's a formula to living unabashedly. Number one, vision. You have to know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, then of course you're going to be bashful about anything that you might talk about. Maybe you'll be tossed to and fro as the doctrine of popular culture gets a hold of you, or somebody in your life says you should do this and the next person in your life says you should do that. You don't know because you have no vision for yourself. So step number one is vision. Step number two is to have objectives. We already talked about that today. Physical, mental, and emotional health is number one. Number two is connections. Number three is your physical health. Number four is your contribution, becoming a man of value. You have to have objectives. So you know generally where you want to go and how you show up as a vision. Now you have objectives that you're going, campaigns, if you want to look at it from a military perspective. We want to win the war, but in order to do that, we need to win these little battles. This is the first town we need to take, and this is strategically what we need to do to deplete these people of resources or neutralize certain threats. So you have campaigns. I call them objectives. And then number three is you have tactics. So if we need to take that town as a campaign, how exactly are we going to do that? We're going to surround the town. We're going to starve them of resources. We're going to bombard them with artillery, and we're going to take the town. And it's the same thing when it comes to your objectives. What are you going to do on a daily basis? So if you want to lose 50 pounds, and that's your objective because that makes you a healthy, thriving, good, capable man, and your objective or your campaign is to lose 50 pounds, then every single day you're going to cut out processed sugars and you're going to work out. You're going to exercise for 45 minutes every day without question. You're going to do those two things, and that's it. And you will inevitably achieve your result. Now, when you're that focused on it, so that's the three-part formula. When you're that focused on it, very little is going to deter you because you're convicted and you're also experiencing results. So when somebody comes to you and says, oh, you know what, Ryan, I can't believe like you're not even eating right and you're working out so much, you must be tired, you're going to hurt yourself. These are things people say. It's like, I don't care what you say because I'm experiencing results and I feel good about myself. I'm getting strong, I'm getting healthy, I'm getting capable. My energy levels are up. My production and other aspects of my life are up. So the way that you live an unabashed life is that three-part formula, and that's called the battle plan. That's what we've crafted over the past 10 years.
Yeah. And you call this out when you talked about the vision, but the opposite of this is what? Who's in control of your life? Everybody else. So you're constantly being acted upon. I mean, we had a great conversation on Iron Council last month, and we were reviewing. It wasn't last month; it was the month before. We were reviewing the book, Essentialism. And it's funny, Ryan. We've read that book so many times. I swear we've read that book so many times, and out of that book, I've always gotten away with throw all my crap away. Keep throwing my crap away, right? Like that's kind of what, like eliminate noise from my life. This time around, early on in the chapters, he says something substantial. And it was something around the idea of you choosing what you're doing. And how often we are acting out of requirement or out of appeasing someone else. Well, I got to do this because if I don't, Ryan will overreact. Well, I better do this or my wife will give me grief. If you're listening, evaluate how much of the choices you are making in life are not your choices. And you're acting out of appeasing someone else. Okay, got it. So your life is about who? And who's in control? Everybody else? And what's funny about this, or unfortunate about this is a space of disempowerment. You will feel disempowered. You will feel feelings of hopelessness and frustration in your life when you're not actively choosing it. And Ryan just gave you the framework on how to actively choose it.
It is, man. It's just about being, not just about, but the foundation is being deliberate and intentional with your life. And part of the way that you do that too, Kipp, is you have to inventory your life. most men won't do this. They'll look at the results that they're experiencing in life, and they'll be satisfied or dissatisfied, but they can never formulate a connection between what is it that's making them satisfied and what is it that's making them dissatisfied, because they have no margin in their lives. So they might be frustrated, for example, with the way that their relationship is going, and yet they're up to their eyeballs in debt, they're up to their eyeballs in tasks, everybody else is dictating how they spend their time, they have no space, they have no margin to actually just sit down and think, you know what kind of relationship do I actually want? How do I want it to look with my wife? And if that's the way, that's vision, right? If that's the way that I want it to look, then what do I want to accomplish in the next 90 days? And you might say in that example that I would love to be more physically and emotionally connected to her. Good, that's good. Okay, how do you do that? Well, you got a quarter, because you were physically and emotionally connected earlier, and what were you doing? Courting her, wooing her, winning her over, impressing her, caring about her, inviting her into your world. So how do you do that now? Take her on a date every week. Send her a note or a text throughout the day and say, hey, I know you're busy, I'm busy too, but I'm thinking about you. Or carving out time after the kids go to bed for 30 minutes to say, hey, you know what? We're going to have structured conversation where we're just going to talk about each other's days and our hopes and dreams and desires and fears. And I'm going to do that every day for the next 90 days. Are you telling me that if you didn't do date night and that structured conversation, that your physical and emotional connection would not improve with your wife? But most guys just don't take the time to do it. They're like, this sucks. I wish she was better in bed. It's like, okay, like, create it, man. You're a man. Create it. And then when you create it, allow her to make it beautiful for you, because that's what women do.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great. All right, Jeremy Kofi, or Coffee, depending on what origins his family came from. What's a family summer tradition you've established and plan to maintain?
We talked about this a little earlier before we hit record on this. There's this really cool new family tradition that we had that we started last year. And we went to this really cool lake with some fairly decent people. And we spent a long weekend up there, and we had a really good time. And now we're just kind of, I don't know, trying to wait for an invite or something that we can get another invite up there.
Yeah, hoping it becomes a tradition. That's funny.
Yes, that's right. But you did say you're pinning down dates, and we're excited as a family to go up and visit you and spend time and hang out. I was talking about Kipp, if you don't know. So that's one. You know, things are a little different in the dynamic for me where, 3 years ago, going through the divorce, we would take a beach trip every year. I haven't done that since the divorce. But this year I really spent some time thinking about, I need to get the kids away. So in the end of July, beginning of August, we're actually going to be doing a trip. And I'm going to let the kids come to a consensus on it with some instruction and direction and some parameters. But yeah, I think that's going to be a big deal. Outside of that, just trying to connect on a daily basis with my kids, which I don't think is a tradition necessarily, but it's something we're trying to infuse in the culture of what we're creating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for us, it's going to the lake is a really common summer thing, and then going up to over by Driggs or Driggs, Idaho. Asia's family has a cabin up there, up in the mountains. Oh, okay. And so,
sweet.
But it's funny because it's pretty much like motorcycle haven is all it is we go up to this cabin, motorcycles come out, and people are just riding motorcycles.
Dirt bikes or road bikes or what?
Dirt bikes.
Dirt bikes. Got it.
Yeah, so it's just up in the mountains and riding motorcycles. So those are the two awesome. I would put in the category of tradition. Everything else, we don't, as much as I'd love to say we go camping a lot during the summer, we don't. I want to.
Yeah.
So, but it's not a tradition quite yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah. Well, another tradition, as you were saying, that is we talked about the Hawaii hunt that's coming up next week.
It's starting to feel like a tradition. Yeah.
I mean, that's something I've done
at least for me.
I think this will be my 5th or 6th year out there now. And
that's tradition.
We always have roughly the same crew. There might be 1 or 2 new people depending on who can make it and who can't. But we've got Ben Shed Crazy coming out, Eric with Hush coming out, you'll be out there, Rick, like my son's coming out. And unfortunately, in the last couple of days, you don't know this, but in the last couple of days, we had somebody who couldn't make it for some personal reasons. And I made actually one call, and Logan Ingram, inside the Iron Council, is actually going to be joining us in Hawaii. Yeah, and this is just as of the last 48 hours. So he'll be out there. And awesome. I wanted to hunt with him. He was at the Forge event last month, and I wanted to hunt with him for years. So it'll be fun to hunt with him. But that's a tradition that we do. And to have my son out there is, I love you guys. Special. I do. Yeah. But having my son out there is way better than just being with the boys. So it should be fun.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, Chris Henningsen. What are some ways that you've found to healthily process extreme, strong emotions like anger and sadness without being harmful or hurtful to those around us? I've tried to suppress method, which is not healthy, and I have recently started trying to do a solitude release where I get away from everyone into the forest or mountains and then just let whatever comes out run its course. Curious of your thoughts and methods.
Well, I do want to say that, what did he say, the stuffing method? What did he say? What was
suppression.
That term used?
Suppression method, yeah.
That's not a method. So get that out of your idea. Because what you're making that sound like is you're making it sound like
that
you're deliberately, like it's a process that might actually work. So it's not a method. It's just what you do because of fear and ego and pride. It's not a method. Okay, so I just want to address that right now. If you suppress it, you can't suppress it. I know that there's the common idea that men aren't supposed to be emotional and we're supposed to be the more logical of the sexes. How is that even possible? It's really just the way that we respond. I think generally it's more acceptable that women are not only emotional, but they speak emotionally. I think that's acceptable because it's relatable to women. That's what we need to understand. Women share emotionally. And I'm not saying they can't be logical and rational. Of course they can. But when it comes to relatability, and women are very relational, whereas men are very directional. So women will relate through shared story of suffering or happiness or joy or sorrow because it connects them to the women in the tribe. Men are directional. So it's not enough to say, I just feel really bad. You have to say, I feel really bad, therefore I'm going to do this. And that's what men respect about each other. Kip, I know when you're having a bad day, like we've been friends long enough, I can see it. I know when you're stressed, for example, or having a bad day or something's impacting you, and you know that about me, but I don't know that we've ever had a conversation where it's like, I just feel bad, and you said, it's okay to feel bad. You should just embrace it. No, it's like, yeah, you feel bad. You know what? Have you tried this? What about this? Here's something that's worked for me. Because we're directional. We're not as relational. We form relationships different, but at the end of the day, we want to get shit done. So the suppression method, the idea that men aren't emotional, that's silly to me. I don't think getting out into the mountains and just letting what happen is a bad thing necessarily, but I also don't think it's enough. I think for men, based on what I just said, you always have to have the transitional phrase, therefore. Yeah. So feel your feelings. Like you're sad, you're upset, you're sorrowful, you're happy, you're glad, you're mad, whatever. Feel it, angry. Feel it all, sure. Sit in it for a while. Go to the mountains and just sit there. Because it's a bit like inoculation. I got the smallpox vaccine years and years ago when I was in the military. And it's a live vaccine. So they're actually infusing micro doses of the smallpox virus into your body in order for you to build up the antibodies and help your body figure out how to effectively combat this disease or this bug. And it hurts, man. Like I got it right in the arm, and they take a needle and they jab the needle. It's not even like a syringe. It's just a needle. And they jab a needle into your arm and they swirl it around while it's in your arm. And then they do it 3 times. That's how I got it. And It's right on my left shoulder. The scar's still there if you look close. But it was infected and it hurt, and then all of your lymph nodes are swollen because your body's trying to figure out how to fight this thing, and it's really, really painful. It's really uncomfortable. And then what happens over time is your body figures out how to fight it and becomes inoculated against it. And now I'm inoculated against the smallpox virus. I think it's a virus or bacteria. I don't actually know right offhand. So I'm inoculated against it. But it's the same point with your emotions. If every time you feel angry, you suppress it and drive it down and don't deal with it, you're not inoculating yourself against anger. You're just pushing it aside and you're avoiding it. Rather than sitting with it and saying, no, I'm angry, I'm pissed because of X, Y, and Z. And you need to have some of that, and it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna sting, and it's gonna be uncomfortable, and it's gonna be painful. So for me, not only is it sitting with it, I think that's part of the equation. Another part of the equation for me is journaling it. I like to get it out of my head and write it down. Hey, I'm angry because of this. I feel slighted because of this. Here's what happened and it made me sad. Here's what happened and it made me frustrated. And here's why I feel that way. And here's where that comes from. So you have to sit in it. Then you have to process it. That's the journaling. And then you have the action. So what are you going to do? You're mad because you got passed over for a promotion, for example. That's a legitimate reason to be mad.
Yeah.
Sit in it, process it. Processing it is, oh, you know what? Yeah, I got passed over because that guy was actually better than me. Or I wasn't willing to play the office politics like maybe I should have been. And then the next step is action. So what do I do about it? Okay, now maybe I figure out, hey, politics is part of the job gig. Or I need a new credential that I didn't have. Or I need to be more helpful with the rest of the team when I'm at work. So it's the 3-part formula. It's the sit in it, the process it, and then take the next steps. And that's where the therefore I am going to do fill in the blank.
Yeah, I love this. Let me ask you this, Ryan. Do you feel like there are ways that process it that are more effective than others? You know, when I'm thinking about what you're sharing, for whatever reason, at first glance, I imagine myself sitting at a table, right? Thinking about it, journaling, right? And then writing action items. And I'm not saying that wouldn't work. However, if me processing it was a run with Matt Jenkins on a trail late at night on a Tuesday, it just works out better. You know what I mean? Because I'm running for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like it just somehow works, right? Or and I'm not saying avoid it, right? Like I'm not like, oh, I'm frustrated with this thing, so I'm just gonna go run. But it's like dealing with it when I run, or going to go train jiu-jitsu, and then, that moment after you're done training, you're laying on the mat exhausted. It's like at that moment, it's like I get some clarity around how to process things better than if I were just sitting at a table. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you based on what I've researched and seen as to why that's the case. Because when we as men are physical towards things, not only are we having to confront the challenge of it, we get exhausted. And when you're exhausted, the barriers come down.
Got it.
You do not have the stamina to be physically exhausted and maintain the emotional and mental barriers that you've put around yourself in order to keep yourself, quote unquote, safe. So have you noticed that? Like when you're exhausted, you have a propensity to be more emotional?
Totally.
Yeah, because you can't maintain the facade anymore. You do not have the energy to maintain it. And that's actually a really good thing, because now the walls are down, there's no barriers or fewer barriers, and you can actually address the root causes without the ego and the bravado and the arrogance and the whatever it is, the posturing that you're trying to do. So I think physical activity is huge. Journaling is a great avenue of that. Physical exercise, but deliberate, like the point you just made, is a good thing. And then talking with the right people. Yeah. Because you can talk with the wrong people and you could become very pessimistic. How many times have you seen that? Where maybe you're having a struggle in your relationship and you go talk with your friend and your friend's like, yeah, bro, she's a bitch. Like, I can't believe she would do that. And you're being mistreated and like she needs to shape up. I guess you're processing it, but how's that going to help? How's that going to help your relationship?
Yeah.
Versus going to somebody who has a great relationship, a healthy level of respect for his wife, and you go to him and you say, hey, I'm having struggles. And he's like, you know what, man, yeah, I have those struggles too. But what I found is I know I love her. I know we're working towards something powerful. I've had to figure out how to build some grace into our relationship when things go sideways. That's a positive way to process that. So make sure when you are talking with other people, they're the kind of people that have the results you want to enjoy. Because if you want to be angry and bitter and contentious, you can find all sorts of people who will foster and encourage that in you. But that's not going to serve you well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, John Preston, he kind of has a long question. John, I'm going to kind of jump to the question itself and not so much of the backstory here. His question is, how does one make the determination on whether you're running away from your challenges or pivoting and running towards an opportunity? This is unique to a job, right? Tough job, has potential, but it's somewhat toxic. He's not sure if jumping ship and moving on is giving up, or is it a pivot to a better opportunity or not? What's the framework that you would have for that?
There's one question. Are you jumping ship because it's hard or because you're uninterested? If you're uninterested in something, and we lose enthusiasm for things. And things aren't always as big of a priority as maybe they used to be. Let me give you an example. So many people know I started a podcast before Order of Man called Wealth Anatomy. That was my first jump into podcasting. And I loved it, the podcasting. I did not love the discussion. And I realized that very quickly. I did about 20 episodes with Wealth Anatomy and realized I really enjoy this medium. I get to think, I get to talk, I get to hear from people I'm interested in. I'm just not interested in this conversation anymore. And so 20 episodes in, I decided to nix the Wealth Anatomy podcast and pivot over into Order of Man. In fact, I just got an email from our host provider or service provider for our website. Everything is housed for Order of Man under Wealth Anatomy still because I just pivoted 10 years ago. I didn't even cancel and then start something new. I just pivoted it. So it's kind of interesting. And it underscores the point. That was a really good move for me. We wouldn't be having this discussion if that weren't the case. But I don't think I quit. I don't think I threw in the towel. And even with Order of Man, there's days that are hard. There's seasons that we've gone through that maybe we lose people or we're not as productive as we otherwise have been. I'm not uninterested. It's just a challenge that I'm actually interested in. So that's really the question you have to answer. Is it that you're uninterested or is it that it's just hard, but you're still interested? And if you're still interested and it still speaks to you and you still feel a calling and compelled to do it, then you're not ready to throw in the towel yet because you're just dealing with hardship. And that's okay, but that's all it is.
Yeah.
Indifference is really the point where you need to consider that probably it's time to move on to something else.
How do you ensure that indifference isn't, like in his example, and probably for a lot of people, especially when we talk about jobs, they're not changing careers, right? The probability is difficult boss that they're having to deal with, maybe not the ideal work environment, and there's a new company on the horizon. It's like, okay, is that I'm still in the same industry, right? So I'm doing the same type of work. So it's not necessarily a pivot of what I focus on. How do I know though that am I leaving difficulty or am I going towards opportunity? And I think, just to add to it really quick, I think a lot of guys, we talk about this a lot, Ryan, on the podcast, where so often we're not probably winning where we should, right? And the natural human tendency is to think that the next job will be better, the next wife will be easier, that the other thing is always going to be better, and what we're not doing is addressing. But that could, for some of us, that could be a drawback where we're doubling down in an environment that is not going to get any better, right? And you need a pivot, right? So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first, give yourself some time. You don't need to be hasty in these decisions because you don't entirely know. And in the process of giving yourself time, you can do a couple things. Number one, mix it up. Kip, one of the stories that we've talked about is when we were doing our Uprising event, and I told you, hey, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to do the Legacy event. And you're like, wait, I want to do Uprising. And we've done more since. But you're like, I like that.
Yeah.
What's that?
They're the best. They're still my favorite events
great.
of all time. Yeah.
I don't think they're the best. I think they're great. I think the Legacy event is the best. But you know whose organization it is?
Yours.
Mine. So I get to decide. And part of the reason is, and I know this about myself, this is my personality. If I continue to do the same thing over and over again, I get stagnant. I get bored. It feels boring and lame. And I don't like it.
Yeah.
And then I get frustrated or I get discouraged or I get complacent. And so with my personality, I realize I do need to mix it up. But this is important. I don't completely abandon what we're doing. I just mix it up enough in the same vein as what we're doing. And that is what makes the difference. So maybe you just need to spice some things up in your life, whether it's with your relationship. Sure, you're going to get bored at times in your relationship. Spice some things up. You know, go on vacation, go on a trip, do something different. Try a different position in bed. I don't know, like spice it up, be different. Still focused on your goal and what's important to you, but spice it up. The second thing is to get outside feedback. So I might reach out to you, Kip, and say, hey, man, I'm really struggling with this work thing right now because of X, Y, and Z. But, man, I value you. You're a good business owner, and I respect and trust what you've been able to create. What do you have for me? And getting outside perspective is going to give you a new way of looking at it. And the last thing I would say is I'm huge into hypothetical, thoughtful questions. Maybe not hypothetical, but just thoughtful, insightful questions that tap into your consciousness. And I do this for a living, is ask questions, so I'm getting better and better at it. But here's a question you can ask yourself. If this situation did not exist, okay, so let's say you're at work and you're frustrated about your boss because he didn't give you all of the things that you needed for the project that you were working on, and you're pissed and you're bothered about it. Here's the question. If that did not exist, meaning your boss got you all the things you needed and took care of everything, would you still want to do the work? Because now you're differentiating between, is it a problem that I don't have the resources, or is it a problem that I'm just not interested, even if I had the resources? And using those hypothetical, conscious questions, even in a relationship. If my wife showed up more powerfully in these ways, would we have a better relationship, and would I still be committed to this relationship? If the answer is yes, great. Now you can go to work on figuring out how to make those needs met for you and for her. If the answer is no, we don't need to get into that necessarily, but that's a deeper conversation that might lead you to a different conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Well, and I like the idea of, sometimes a lot of our upsets, they're all over the place, right? And there's some value in just dealing in reality, right? Like what am I dealing with? What is the brass tacks? And then also what's in my realm of control and what's outside my realm of control. And the things that I can take responsibility about, what should I be doing and would it make a difference? But if you're exiting that space of waiting and hoping on behalf of other people, it's probably not going to happen, right? And you can ask people of those things, and that's part of what's within your realm of responsibility. But yeah, dealing in reality.
Well, there's another component of this, Kip, is another question is what should you do regardless of external results or validation? Yeah. So
like what's the right thing?
Are you going to the... Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, I would say that. But like an example would be, would I go to the gym still if I knew my wife was still leaving me? If the answer is no, then you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for her, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
If the answer is, yeah, I would actually still go to the gym. okay, then that's a good, then you know you're doing it for yourself, and you need to do things for yourself because you're never going to get the validation. Never. Even if you have the most supportive wife, the most thoughtful boss, the most loving children, you're never going to get enough validation from people if you can't learn to validate yourself. You just won't.
Yeah.
So doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because anybody will see it, praise you, or you'll receive some notoriety or accolades from it. No, just because this is inherently who I am as a man.
Got it. Joe Gunter, best advice I ever received one day, one of my training for now 25-year career in corrections. If you knew that in the next 15 minutes you'll be fighting for your life, would you have trained better today? 2 days later, I was involved in a 200-man fight in a yard of a USP Gunnison. If you had this knowledge in 15 minutes, would you be fighting for you or your family's life? What would you prioritize? Learning to defend yourself.
I mean,
learning to defend yourself, financial freedom, spiritual peace, hasty retreat.
Yeah, I mean, you have to defend. I mean, in that situation, you have to fight for yourself first. That's the priority. I mean, it's just a level of prioritization. Because guess what? If you're dead, then your family's not taken care of.
Yeah. Who cares about the financial well-being, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So look, I mean, he brings up a good point. The financial realm is important. The spiritual realm is important, but you should be doing, and that's why the battle planning system is so crucial, because you should be doing those things regardless of your career or the danger that you might be facing or anything like that. So we're talking about two different things. We're talking about getting yourself out of a threatful situation, number one. And separately, we're talking about just your overall well-being and the value that you bring into the people into your lives. And so you should be doing all of that all of the time. And then that way, when you're faced with a difficult circumstances, whether it's a 200-man fight in a prison, then what you're going to do is deploy situational awareness, the tactical training, firearms training, leadership, communication with your guys, maybe even being able to for example, if I'm in a 200-man fight in a prison and I find myself there, I'm probably not going to get on the ground and throw arm bars. Yeah. Because I'll die.
Yep.
So what do I do in that situation? Strike, create distance, and get myself behind some security until we can get into an elevated position and neutralize the threat.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of training that goes on in that, but that's case specific. But yeah, you should be doing it all and then realizing, okay, what is the threat right now? If it's 200 men fighting, okay, that's one threat. If it's an active shooter situation, that's another threat. If it's that your wife is upset with you and you guys are having a hard time because of the way that you maybe disciplined one of your children, that's a different kind of conversation. If you're up to your eyeballs in debt and the creditors are knocking down your doors, that's a different conversation. So it just depends, and you have to prioritize what is prudent right now.
Well, I like this question. Obviously, it's geared towards quote unquote fighting against someone for your life, right?
Yeah.
But like maybe we would twist this, if you knew that in the next 15 minutes you'll be fighting for your life on a hospital bed, would you have trained better today?
If I'm like confronted with an illness or a disease or something like that.
That changes
or
this, right? Like, hey, you're dying. You're dying. What would you have trained better today, right? And I think the answer for a lot of us is probably the same things. It's our connections.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. And also, is it a disease or an illness that could have been combated with a better lifestyle?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So that's an issue. But you're right. If I'm on my deathbed, I'm not thinking about what I'm thinking about is my family taken care of? So if I have time, I'm getting financial resources and documents together. I'm getting passwords and account numbers together. They're already together, but I'm making sure everything's consolidated and people who need to know. Yeah. Maybe it's like will time, get an estate planning in place. And then I'm writing letters to my children. I'm having conversations about lessons I've learned. I'm I'm spending more and more time with them. That's what I would be doing if I was on my deathbed.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is crazy to think about. We actually might be on our deathbed right now.
Yeah. Don't even know.
Like, I might die today.
Yeah.
So, am I doing those things? To varying degrees, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Same. Good reflection. All right, Justin. Justin helped me out with pronunciation of his name, so he's gave me a solid.
But that's funny because you said pronunciation of his name, so you mispronounced pronunciation
I know.
as you were.
Well, you got me all flustered. Let me see what version. A cuff. There you go. All right, Justin Acuff. I made a post about cutting off things of old. What is something that you need to immediately cut out of your life in order to move forward?
Oh, for me, I know. Like, if he's asking me specifically, it's guilt and shame for past mistakes. Like, you can't. And there's vices that people get into, but I would think.
Yeah, I think it is.
You can't move forward if you're wrapped up in guilt and shame of the past. You can reflect on the past. I will forever. We should. It's like looking in the rearview mirror. You have to look and see because that gives you a little bit of context about where you're at and what's around you and maybe how far you've come. But yeah, I think that's, and by the way, guilt and shame actually lead to a lot of other things that you should cut out of your life. Addiction, alcohol abuse, pornography, you name it. You name the vice, and a lot of it is actually wrapped up in guilt and shame.
Which most of us would read this question and say, oh, I need to cut out the alcohol, the other things, when those are just surface level items. Right?
Sure, and you should. We all should, of course. Yeah. But if you get to the root of it, the guilt and the shame and the remorse, there's no way you can move forward when you're thinking about how horrible of a person you are because of the thing that you did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You just can't. So, yeah, you got to let go of that stuff. And I wish I could tell you the exact formula for doing it. I think it takes a lot of reflection. It takes time.
And degrees. You're right. There's probably degrees of it. Yeah.
It takes a willingness to be humble and learn from your mistakes. It takes a level of grace to say, that's who I was. That's not who I need to be right now. That's offering yourself some grace. I was human. I am human. Even acknowledging that in the future you're going to mess up. And recognizing it now so that when you do, two things. You can fix it faster and you can let go of it sooner.
Yeah. I think mine's the same as yours. I would say that's probably number one. I think closely related to that is expectations. I hold on to way too many expectations of the way I think things should be. And I think I allow them to undermine how I show up and how I treat people. Probably my biggest issue.
I would add for myself, not just the way things should be, but also the way people ought to behave or respond to me. That's another thing that I fall prey to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Just let people be who they're going to be,
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Zach Halsinger, what do we do to put all the information we absorb into action? What things should we be focusing on in the moment and not get lost to old patterns and old behaviors?
The battle plan.
Yeah.
We cannot
clarifying
focus.
The objectives, right?
That's it.
Taking action.
Vision, objectives, tactics.
Yeah.
That's it. And then with things that we shouldn't be doing, I think he alluded to that a little bit, or getting back into old patterns.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can get rid of an old pattern, whether it's a mindset or a behavior or an action or a thought, without replacing it with something more effective. So for example, you might want to quit smoking. I think you probably could if the situation was catastrophic enough. So for example, if you go to your doctor and he's like, hey, you look like you're either developing lung cancer, have lung cancer, or will have lung cancer. I think a lot of people could probably put an end to it if it was a catastrophic consequence to their behavior.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's usually like that. Our behaviors are pretty insidious. They take time to manifest. They don't really feel all that dangerous now, but compounded over time, they will be.
Totally.
But the key is that you have to replace it with something. Charles Duhigg has some great research on this in The Power of Habit. James Clear has some great research on this in his book, Atomic Habits, that if you're trying to let go of old patterns and habits, those would be good resources for you. But at the end of the day, you have to come up with, he calls them, I think Charles calls them triggers or cues, triggers, action, or something along that line. So for example, if you smoke and you don't want to smoke, if it comes up to break time, that might be a bit of a trigger for you. And then you have the reward of smoking, and that does something for you. What does it do for you? Well, maybe it relaxes you, or maybe it's time that you use to be social with your coworkers. So there's things that you're gaining from it, trying to figure out what those are. But ultimately, to go back to the question, it's the battle plan. And we do that because there's 4 key areas. There's not 40 areas. You can't focus on all of those things. And we do it over a 90-day window because anything less is not enough to make good improvement, and anything more might be too long for you to sustain your behavior without seeing a measured result. So that's why we use that. So the answer is, I don't like always saying the battle plan, but the answer is the answer, and that's what it is.
Totally. Well, and we've seen evidence of that over and over, right? It's like, it's not like guys join the Iron Council going, man, I never thought that I should actually prioritize my physical well-being and get in better shape. Of course they've thought about it. Right. Of course they've done the mental gymnastics about all the things they should be doing. We haven't provided some amazing insight in regards to ways to lose weight. What's the difference? System, framework, and then them taking action against it. And what do you know? Oh, I lost 20 pounds. Who would have ever thought?
It's not rocket science.
But that's what happens, right? And that's what happens once you start taking intentional action, right?
What's funny, Kip, as I was thinking about this, is every once in a while we'll get questions. A question we might get that's related to this one is something like, how do I get my life on track? And you can't say the battle plan.
Yeah.
So they start like qualifying our answers. I'm like, well,
yeah.
You just cut off the answer. Like,
yeah.
Wait,
Let me
so
just
you're
rename
asking me
battle
a
plan to
question,
something else. Yeah.
but I can't actually give you the answer.
Yeah.
Or people will say, how do I lose weight? And I don't want to hear the same advice of exercising and eating cleaner. That's the answer.
Ozempic. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess there's another. There you go. Yeah, it's like people qualify these things sometimes, and it's funny to me. It's because maybe it's not sexy. It's not the Ozempic answer, and maybe that's what we call it. You're looking for the Ozempic answer.
Yeah, and there's not one.
You're looking for the answer where you get the result without the work, and I think you can achieve some measured success in that result. But you know what? You didn't earn it. I mean, if you wanted to build financial abundance, I could tell you to invest $1,000 every week into lottery tickets, and that will increase your odds of winning the lottery. And let's say, hypothetically, you do win the lottery. You didn't earn that. How long are you going to keep that? 4 years or less on average? Because you didn't earn the result by developing the skill set required to build financial abundance in your life. And if you're taking a shot or a pill to lose weight and you lose weight, you didn't earn the skill set that is required, or the lifestyle change is required to maintain that and be healthy. You're not healthy. You just lost weight.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's a kickstart. Maybe you start to see those results and you feel good, and that kickstart gets you into thinking about the food that you're eating and should I exercise more and what kind of exercise should I do? If it's a kickstart, fine. I get that. It's the same reason why I look at New Year's resolutions, and I think New Year's resolutions kind of suck most of the time. But if it's New Year's, if it's January 1st, that is the fuel or the kickstart you need to make some changes, I'm good with that. I don't care what gets you motivated. If it triggers additional changes and improvement in your life, then by all means, as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, by all means, get after it.
So we have a dual purpose question to kind of wrap us up. Peyton Mathis, I get the intent of the question. It's a good question, Peyton. But can you talk a little about the Forge event coming up next year? I'm going to the next Forge, and I'm wondering, what should I do to train for it, and what challenges there will be? I know there is still a lot going on behind the scenes, and y'all don't want to say too much.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're coming. It's going to be an incredible event. I'm trying to build that out with Larry Hagner to be 4 times what it was this year, and it's going to be an absolutely incredible event. We've got a lot of other good things planned. What I would say to you for training, so to speak, is figure out what you want out of life now. Get your mental and emotional and spiritual health in check. If it's spiritual, go to church, read the Bible, pray, be around other spiritual people. If it's emotional health, learn how to emotionally regulate what's happening with you. And we talked a little bit about that today. Connections, I would say, join the Forge Facebook group, because you're going to connect with other attendees, past attendees and current attendees, who you can talk with about what they've experienced and what was good for them and what they enjoyed and what they didn't. From a physical perspective, lose some weight, feel your body correctly, build some muscle. Maybe there's some other things like, jujitsu, hint, that maybe you could plan for and train a little bit leading up to the event. There'll be running, there'll be physical exercises, there'll be ropes courses and obstacle courses. Like we're going to put you to work physically because of what we talked about earlier, where it breaks down barriers. It breaks down walls because you no longer have the energy to keep those walls up. And then the last component is being valuable. So what are you going to bring to the event? Don't worry about what I'm going to bring, because I know we're going to put together an incredible event, and everybody who came knows that as well. What are you going to bring? How are you going to contribute? How are you going to be an incredible attendee of this event? What kind of conversations do you want to have? What kind of questions do you want to ask? What do you want to learn out of the event? And start thinking about that now, so that when it comes May time next year, you'll be poised and primed to really make the most of this event.
And that's themensforge.com for you guys that want to sign up for next year's event. And then the other call to action, just really quick, is Iron Council enrollment. It's opening up, right? The answer to a lot of questions today, right, is systems and surrounding yourself around people that will hold you accountable, that will speak into you. And that's what we're about in the Iron Council. So to learn more, orderofman.com/Iron Council. And of course, connect with Mr. Michler on X and Instagram @Ryan Michler.
Awesome. Kip, I know you've got a hard stop. Good questions, guys. Appreciate the questions. And hopefully we gave you some good answers or some things to consider. We will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.